For the makers who lead, success isn't measured in promises. It's measured in results. At Rockwell Automation, our 24,000 employees across the globe focus every day on delivering business results for our customers. Because with every result achieved, we realize the promise of expanding human possibilities. That's why we're Rockwell. Our customers make products and deliver solutions that touch all of our lives. And they partner with us to realize measurable, consistent, and profitable business outcomes, delivering the real results they and their customers depend on. The people of Rockwell and our vast production technology portfolio make a real difference in industrial production quality, speed, and efficiency. Making a difference in ramping up adequate supplies of life-saving vaccines. Making a difference by helping deliver vehicles that are affordable, efficient, and safe. Making a difference by engineering sustainability into every system and solution we deliver. Because at Rockwell, we believe better is possible. And the results we deliver add value for our customers every day, in every industry we serve. Our systems connect your company end to end with data-fueled insights, improving the decisions that deliver results and expanding human possibilities. Rockwell Automation. Results achieved.
And welcome to our live stream video today. I'm Juliana Ackerbloom, social media and content specialist at Rockwell Automation, and today we're going to discuss how to design resilient OT systems, minimize unplanned downtime, and help proactively protect your industrial operations from cyber threats. And as always, we love hearing from our audience, so let us know in the comments what's one cybersecurity challenge you've faced or are currently facing in your operations. Now, industrial organizations today face a perfect storm. Cyber attacks are growing in both frequency and sophistication, while many OT environments still lack the visibility, segmentation, and response capabilities needed to defend operations effectively. During this live stream, we'll discuss how the NIST cybersecurity framework helps organizations move from reactive to proactive resilience. What makes this approach powerful is that this framework is not just about technology, it's about aligning IT, OT, and leadership around a shared strategy. It helps organizations understand their risks, prioritize actions, and build a security posture that supports uptime and safety, not just compliance. As you can see, we have a lot to cover, so here to break this all down are two cybersecurity experts, Rick Kahn, Global Director, Cybersecurity Services, Executive Sales at Rockwell, and Stephen Taylor, Global Senior Product Manager, Cybersecurity Services at Rockwell. Welcome, Rick and Stephen. Thank you for joining me.
Oh, thanks, Julian. I'm excited to be here. It's my favorite topic.
Hey, Rick. Looking forward to a great conversation today.
Fantastic. I can feel the enthusiasm from the both of you already. Now, Rick, let's start with you. What are industrial operations' biggest cybersecurity challenges today, and why is the OT environment uniquely vulnerable?
Yeah, great question. This is a starting and stumbling block for many. OT is very interesting. It's first and foremost, it's very complex. It's becoming more complex as more organizations try to get more productivity out of existing investments. They're adding, loop tuning, alarm management, process improvement stuff, which means you need experts from afar and data to come in and out. You then put that into the fact that these were built 20 years ago with a set and forget environment. They're not the normal 3-year refresh that IT does. And there's the third rail, if you will, the OT, the PLCs, the relays, the controllers that are huge on availability, not so much on the CIA triad of the IT side. So you have this sort of perfect storm of a lot of complexity, a lot of pressure, and a unique skill set that's required. And that's where the IT-OT convergence comes in. Like you're saying, we're trying to take an IT view for IT systems into a very operational environment with spinning equipment and lives and revenue and brand recognition at risk in many of these cases. The biggest result that people are trying to make heads or tails of at the start of this journey is, what do I have? How many of them do I have? How big of a deal is it? You ask any operator, they know what an hour downtime costs, but to translate that into how you spend on cyber dollars, cyber people, where you start, where you stop, because to be honest, we'll never get zero risk in this environment, but knowing how far to go, which order, that's a tall order, and that comes from starting with a solid knowledge base, which is a challenge for many.
Yeah, absolutely. Those are some interesting points. Now, how can companies build resilient OT systems, reduce downtime, and safeguard operations in this evolving landscape?
Well, that's a tall order and a very aspirational statement, which we all want to get to. So how does it boil down to brass tacks? Well, you need to know, we like to call it, what does done look like? What are we trying to achieve? And there's no shortage of guidelines or segments around regulatory expectations. Many of our clients actually have multiple masters to serve with respect to regulation and insurance, et cetera. So we usually point our clients to the NIST CSF. The NIST CSF is a overarching framework that actually references multiple of those other regulatory and best practice guidelines I mentioned. And so it's a great sort of safety in the middle of the road to make sure you're not being too far into a particular area, but it gives you the building blocks. It's 5 main building blocks with a 6th sort of guiding principle known as governance and policies. But the 5 building blocks are identify, what do you have? The question we just tried to answer is that was a big challenge. How do we protect those devices once we've identified them? Now that we've got sort of a solid state in place and we're locked down, can we detect and monitor to make sure that nothing's happening or bad guys aren't getting in or things are decaying, et cetera? And then, of course, if for some reason that does happen, the last 2, which we never hope to pull, respond and recover, get back to normal, get back to operating, et cetera. And so the nice thing about that framework is it gives you prescriptive things you can do in each of those cases. Now, within those, you still need to decide, what does done look like? And many people look at inventory as the first step and think, as long as I know what I have, I'll be good. But when you get further down into protect, respond, recover, you need much more data about those assets, because the respond, recover part, we can't have a duplicate of everything in the OT space. So we need to decide where to spend our money on what the crown jewels are, how to make them redundant, how to make them resilient, and eventually cascade down. But this is where the intricacies of, if I don't know what I don't know and I don't know where I'm trying to get to, becomes exponentially difficult. So data with a guideline and what are we trying to achieve together start to make a reasonable roadmap.
Yeah, definitely. And that's a great overview of the NIST framework and its benefits. So for organizations that are in the early stages, what's the first step organizations should take to begin this journey?
The ones that we're finding have the most benefit take all of the things we just talked about to mind. And instead of just saying I want an inventory, I want a comprehensive profile of my assets. I want to know that it's a Windows box or a Rockwell PLC or a Cisco switch for sure, but I need to know what its function is in my operations. We have clients who have a map of their worldwide organization, and they actually have a gold, a silver, and a bronze logo over them to reflect revenue recognition. There's also safety issues, safety systems within these. Some of these are big, heavy spinning equipment. So the inventory is just the basic. Once you build a comprehensive understanding, or what we call a multidimensional or contextual asset risk, which includes the asset, its operational impact, its vintage, its legacy, how it's configured, does it have backup, et cetera, all those things across the whole NIST. Now we've got a comprehensive set of data that we can do an assessment with and we can analyze. Now we can say there's 10,000 risks. And by the way, the top 1,000 are our most critical systems at our highest impact facilities. I've now gone from shotgun approach to a cyber sniper, if you will. I can start to pick off the big ones. I can also proactively manage my board and my directors and my insurers and say, hey, we need to engineer some of this obsolescence out. Here's a capital plan over 3 and 5 years to get rid of some of the 20-year-old stuff that's really quite an Achilles heel for us. It starts with that comprehensive risk assessment, understanding the actual security posture of the assets relative to their function, and then turning that into an objective.
Yeah, definitely. Those are some great tips. Well, thank you, Rick, for sharing more about today's cybersecurity challenges and tips to overcome them. Now, if you're just joining us, we just heard from Rick Kahn about cybersecurity challenges in the OT environment and what companies can do to build resilient OT systems, reduce downtime, and safeguard operations. Now, let's talk more about the NIST framework and how it can guide you in building a more resilient OT environment. Here with me to share some insight is Stephen Taylor. So Stephen, the identify function is the first pillar of the NIST framework. Why is it so critical to start here, especially in an OT environment, and what key steps should organizations take in this phase?
That's a great question. Really, it comes down to one simple fact. Visibility is the foundation on which all these programs are developed, right? You can't protect what you can't see. You can't understand what you don't know, right? So many OT environments really lack a comprehensive asset inventory or even just a basic understanding of what they have, where it is, and what it does within their environments, right? So as we take that and in the identify step, there's a few things that you should be considering. One, do I have a comprehensive asset inventory? Two, have I actually done assessments as to what my overall risk and exposure is within these parts of my environment? Have I done network mapping or anything to really tell me where these things are located logically? And then how do I map those to a physical area that all my operators actually speak to on a day-to-day basis? And on top of that, we want to map those vulnerabilities and exposures that we have within those environments. And then, as Rick was saying, and as we talked about before, how do you now apply your operational context to really drive criticality, rating this in a way that's going to make sense to not only your operators, but your board and your leadership within your organization?
Yeah, it's true. You can't protect what you can't see. So then this framework includes protect, detect, respond, and recover as critical functions. How do these functions work in concert to build a robust and resilient cybersecurity posture for OT environments?
Let's take those one at a time, right? Let's break those down, right? So in the protect space, right, this is all about implementing safeguards to limit how you may contain or limit the impact of a potential security event, right? So this may include network segmentation, security configurations, access controls, things of that nature. This is about being proactive to prevent an incident. Next, we have detect. This is really where it's not just about protection, but as threats emerge, things are going to change, right? So this function is mainly about how do we actively monitor for anomalies, indicators of compromise within that OT environment, and really make sure that we're focusing on the tools and the processes to make sure that we can do that in as real of a time manner as we possibly can. This is where threat intelligence is key, right? Really not just from one source, but from many sources, bringing in layers into that detection capability to make sure that you're actually seeing something that's actually happening within your environment. From there, we have that response capability, right? This is really where after a threat's detected, we have to have a really well-defined incident response plan. This is the action taking, right? So this is how do we contain what's happening within the environment? How do we reduce the overall expansion of that threat within my environment? How do we get rid of the threat, eradicate it completely? And then how do we communicate what root cause was and how we can actually get this more streamlined into the future? Now, with those first three, this ultimately comes down to the recover. When anything ever happens, you have to get operations back up as quickly and as safely as possible, right? So this is really where we're trying to return from an incident to normal operation. So making sure you have backups, disaster recovery plans in place, the procedures for actual operators to be able to implement these. This is really where you go from responding to back up to your normal. The important thing to realize with all this is that it's all these functions working together. It's not going from necessarily one step to the other. This is a continuous cycle that has to continuously be maintained, operated, and you have to make sure that in each one of these buckets that you're really focusing on collaboration between each of these different functions and steps to make sure you have the most robust plan.
That's a great overview. Now, the govern function underpins the entire framework. Why is strong governance essential for long-term OT cybersecurity resilience, and how can organizations maintain continuous improvement?
That's a great question. The governance, while relatively new to the overall framework, is a way in which you can actually prove that the steps that you're taking are making an impact in your environment. And one of the key ways that you have to be able to do that is by using that governance to drive alignment across leadership and operations, right? It's not just about people that are doing the day-to-day activities. It's about how does everybody within the organization know what we should be focusing on, how we should be going about it, and then making those changes over time, right? This needs to be a shared vision, and this responsibility is joint across both IT, OT, and executive leadership within our customer base. Really, this governance helps drive a few key things here, and one of those being resource allocation, whether that be from a budgeting and a financial perspective or allocating resources, personnel, time, right? Effectively responding to these cybersecurity initiatives, right? How do we have the right people at the right place at the right time to be able to do their daily activities, right? And then without governance, you wouldn't have that without policy and procedures, right? So making sure that you're regularly reviewing what your steps and policies may be, And how do you actually audit yourselves against those, right? Making sure that you're actually looking back to this. If we look back to kind of that recover phase of the NIST framework, if you have backups, that's great. But if you're also not testing those backups, you're not going to be able to respond and recover, right? So it's continuous improvement, right? Everything is going to change more quickly than we can respond sometimes. But how do you make sure that you have a framework in place that encourages you to continuously assess and adapt on an ongoing fashion, and then ultimately communicate across all the functions within your organization, right? This is all the stakeholders that are involved in OT security, right? So making sure that that communication chain is top of mind is what's going to drive the governance of the overall program.
Absolutely. Those are some great tips. Well, Rick and Stephen, thank you for a great conversation, and thank you to our viewers for watching. If you'd like to learn more about building resilient industrial operations through effective cybersecurity, click the link in this post. Once again, I'm Juliana Ackerbloom, and we'll see you next time.